right, good morning and welcome to Counterpoints. Saagar, how you doing?
Oh, it's great to see you, man. People live for the pound. It's great to see you. It's great not to have to shout my own intro. I'm just here for the ride.
So
That's all I'm doing.
Emily is out doing some reporting.
Right.
She'll actually be back for the Friday show. We're going to interview Ezra Klein for that one.
Excited to see that.
That should be fascinating. Today, often when you look at the kind of rundown along the bottom of the show, you can't really necessarily tell what we're going to talk about. Today, you definitely can. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump both making the rounds. We're going to talk about that. Voting is starting.
Literally.
Voting.
Already started in some states.
Georgia setting smashing records. And I think that, and we'll talk about why that is, I think it's because Trump is now telling people you also need to vote early.
That's exactly
So before it was half the country was voting early.
Now everybody is.
Now everybody is, so they're smashing those records. We got a lot of updates when it comes to the Israel-Palestine, Lebanon situation that we will get to, including some news that's breaking just this morning about potential U.S. plans for a quote-unquote day after. And then, of course, we got to talk about Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris's ghostwriter, we should say, getting busted for plagiarism, which is much more a media story than it is anything else.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
none of us really care.
I didn't particularly. I mean, it's like embarrassing, but it's one of those where the media reaction to it was interesting. You're actually the person who flagged it. It wasn't me, and that's why I wanted to talk about it with you. So yeah, it's gonna be exciting. Take advantage, by the way, breakingpoints.com. You can become a premium subscriber. You get that Friday show early. That's what some of us live for over here, especially Ezra Klein. I'm excited to see what you guys do with it, so that'll be fun. All right, let's get to Kamala Harris. As you said, she was on Charlamagne, The Breakfast Club yesterday, and I listened to the entire thing. I tortured myself. It was at 5 p.m., so I wasn't too happy about it, but it is what it is. You gotta do what you do for the people, and there were a couple of interesting moments that came out of it. First is, and you haven't even gotten a chance to react, Ryan, this whole Obama situation where he's lecturing, hectoring brothers. Remember, his words, not mine, insane in my opinion. Be like, I want to speak to the brothers out there. Like, y'all are just making up all these excuses, but really, you just hate women. And you're like, well maybe there's something else. And
the extra awkward part, and we'll get into it, the extra awkward part, he's addressing a small room of mostly young black men who have taken it upon themselves to come out to a political
They're
event.
at a campaign.
So he's not even talking to them.
I know.
Because
it's all for the cameras.
they're all supportive of Harris. So he's using them to speak past them.
They're like props. Yeah, it's disgusting. But Kamala was asked a little bit about that by Charlamagne. At the very least, he did speak up a little bit about it, but her response tells you a little bit. So let's take a listen.
I do want to say, President Obama was out there last week waving his finger at black men. When are Liz Cheney and Hillary Clinton going to wave their finger at white women? When are Bill Clinton and Joe Biden going to wave their finger at white men? Because 52% of white women voted for Trump in 2016. 55% voted for Trump in 2020. They all voted against their own interests. When the finger waving going to start at them?
Well, thank you for highlighting that. I do have the support of over 200 Republicans who worked for various administrations, including everyone going back to Ronald Reagan, to the Bushes, to John McCain and Mitt Romney, and including Liz Cheney. And I'm very proud to have her support. And I believe that many of them who may have voted for Trump before are supporting me because they know the stakes are so high in terms of our very democracy and rule of law. And
so the finger wagging should start today or tomorrow.
Well, I think what is happening is that we are all working on reminding people of what is at stake, and that is very important.
So quite a little bit of a dodge there. She was also asked by Charlamagne at one point. She was like, were you upset that Obama did that? Because it seemed like your whole blackmail reaction was a result. She's like, oh, I'm not upset. I'm not upset at all. But she will not touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, she can't criticize Obama.
Right, but it does seem clear. And this is one of those questions. Has Obama lost it or not? Because I don't know, Crystal and I were talking about it yesterday. I wonder what you think. While he was president, nobody would even dare call him out for basically hectoring and lecturing people, especially black people, to come out and vote for him. It was just too taboo. But now that he's not the president, he's actually doing it on behalf of somebody else. Maybe it's just a little bit grosser because it's not even about him anymore. It's about telling them what to do and go do something else. So she is trying to sidestep that very carefully, which is smart in my opinion. But why is it then that Obama feels the license to just freestyle and do all this stuff with basically, and I just can't help think that it's not helpful, especially with the media reaction to it. And for a lot of people who are, if you're a young black guy and you're 22 years old, bro, you were like 16 when Obama was president. It's been a long time. You know, that's, you know, your parents might remember him fondly, but for you, like, you were a child during Yes We Can and all that. You were literally a child. You don't remember any of that. If anything, you've had a experience since then. So why would you want to listen to him?
And in case Charlamagne's dig there was a little bit too subtle for some people, like what he was saying there was that it is unfair and ridiculous to put this onus on black men in a way that you do not with white men and white women.
Right. Well, with any racial group, no person owes their vote to anybody because of their race.
So he's right. So what he's saying there is like, okay, Obama's out there finger wagging black men. Why are we forgetting the fact that white women need the finger wag? Like, if the way to get, and it's absurd. Like, his question is absurd, and it's deliberately absurd. And in the absurdity, you see the problem with Obama's finger wagging, because nobody thinks that white women are all of a sudden going to start voting completely en masse for Democrats if you just wag your finger at them and tell them that they're wrong for the way that they're voting. Certainly not the case for white men. And so what Charlamagne is saying there is, what is it about your relationship to black men that makes you think that that is actually going to work? Like, let alone having those thoughts in the beginning, but like, your goal is to win votes. And that's not going to work. So what on earth are you thinking here? Obama, though, he just, you know, he's Obama. He feels
like
he can do anything.
Nina Turner even said that. Like, he's a deity to some people.
He really is. And you know, 2008, he didn't have to do any finger wagging. What he had to do, and people forget this history, is prove to the black community that he could win.
Yes, that's right.
Like, his numbers before Iowa.
I remember South Carolina was pro-Hillary up until after he won Iowa.
And and he really benefited from, I think, a lot of people in the country not really understanding Iowa's like internal politics. And also, it's a caucus system, which means that the most liberal people are coming out, and people on the East and West Coast don't realize that Des Moines has a bunch of hipsters and coffee shops and liberals and like organics, organic food and Whole Foods and whatever. And so there are a bunch of white people who are happy to vote for Barack Obama out in Iowa. They thought it was, a bunch of like corn-fed, white farmers with, corn stalks sticking out of their mouth, or whatever the stereotype is they have in their minds of who Iowa voters were. So when they saw that person in their mind voting for Obama, they're like, oh, he can win. Now I will support him.
Right.
But it was never you will support me because I'm black. Like, that never would have worked for him.
Yeah, he earned it, and he actually tried to work for it. But now that he's been president and they've turned him into a god, now things are a little bit different. Now, well, with Kamala, there was another. Look, Charlamagne, I'll just say this. He's clearly he is like an MSNBC liberal. That's his version of the world that kept coming through. He'd be like, why don't liberals make the point that Republicans are bad? He's like, why don't people understand that? And Kamala's like, well, I think we try, Charlamagne. But, it's like people don't always agree with us. But sometimes he would poke through with some good stuff. So we had two kind of challenging questions. One was on him challenging her. He's like, why do you seem so scripted all the time? So here's what she had to say.
Now, one thing they've been saying, a lot of your press hits get criticized. Folks say you come off as very scripted. They say you like to stick to your talking points. And some media says you have...
That would be called discipline.
Oh, okay. Speak to that.
But go on.
No, I was going to say, some people say you have an inability to fearlessly say who you are and what you believe. I know that's not true. But what do you say to that criticism? And is it fair for SNL to make fun of it?
Hasn't Maya Rudolph been wonderful?
Yes.
I think I have nothing but admiration for the comedy, and I think it's important to be able to laugh at yourself and each other.
But what do you say to people
in the spirit of obviously comedy and not belittling people as my opponent would do?
But what do you say to people who say you stay on the talking points?
I would say you're welcome. I mean, listen, here's the thing. I love having conversations, which is why I'm so happy to be with you this afternoon. And the reality is that there are certain things that must be repeated to ensure that I have everyone know what I stand for and the issues that I think are at stake in this election. And so it requires repetition. Some people say that if until someone has heard the same thing at least 3 times, it just doesn't stay with you. So repetition is important.
So what do we all think? That's how she's trying to turn being scripted into a superpower. I kind of disagree with her. Just tell me what you think. I don't think it's that she's too scripted. It's that when she's off script, she clearly has not thought about literally anything at all, and then reverts back to safe territory, kind of like she did right there.
Right. So she has a script, and she deploys it in different scenarios, no matter what the question
Bingo.
is.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is for me. But what did you take away?
It's right. So I think scripted. I think that's an interesting point. Yeah, scripted is okay. Fine. You've got your talking points. You've got your
covering
answers.
Trump for 8 years. I can basically predict what he's going to say on a wide variety of topics.
I think what people actually want is more scripts. Like there's like 3 scripts.
Yeah.
And so, but there are dozens of questions that people have. But what she does is all the questions on this issue get funneled into this script, and all the ones here are this one, and all the ones here are that script. And so then you never actually get an answer. That SNL, has made fun of her for that. With one of the ways they did that was she was in a game show, and they asked her a question, and she answered, I grew up in a middle-class family.
Yes, exactly.
Which is not answering the question.
Yeah.
And it is a script. But she's also correct that, it's politics and discipline is a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, look, discipline, as you said, she's not wrong in the whole, like, if you don't repeat something, but I think part of the art, to the science is you don't have to.
People don't want to feel it.
They don't want to feel it.
It shouldn't become a joke. If it becomes a joke on Saturday Night Live, you took it too far.
And she's like pretending like, everything was all good with Maya Rudolph and all that. But the fact that even they can get to it, this like hyper liberal comedy organization is taking a shot at you. Clearly, like that's something that the most basic analysis will lead you to. The final thing that we pulled was actually on the border. This is again where Charlamagne, to his credit, actually will hit her a little bit. And he's like, come on. He's like, because she was talking about the border and how she's like, I support this new border bill and all of this. And he's like, come on, you guys don't bear any responsibility for the last 3 years. So she gets a little bit testy with him. Let's take a listen.
But doesn't the Biden administration have to take some blame for the border, though? A lot of the blame? Because, I mean, the first 3 years, y'all did get a lot of things wrong with the border.
No, Charlamagne, within hours of being inaugurated, the first bill we passed before we did the Inflation Reduction Act, before we did the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, before we did the Safer Communities Act to deal with gun violence, first thing we dropped was a bill to fix the broken immigration system, which, by the way, Trump did not fix when he was president. And you can look at every step along the way. We then tightened up the asylum application process. We then worked with what we needed to do to secure ports of entry. We did a number of things. Congress has to act to fix the immigration system, and it has been broken for a long time. Congress has to act, but it does not help when finally a bipartisan group got together to fix it, and Donald Trump told them, hold on, don't do that, because it won't help me.
Come on, man. I mean, It's like, what are we doing here? It's like, but the Democratic House passed a bill that the Republicans then didn't, and that's why things exponentially exploded. Just be real with people. Like the idea that this is not as a result, at least a very large part, some of the delta between the Trump administration and the Biden administration is not a result of executive action is ludicrous. I mean, in some ways, that was a skillful answer. Charlamagne, God bless him, but he's not like deeply familiar with immigration law or executive action. But at the very least, he intuited something basic where he's like, some of this is on you, is it not?
And the reason that was such a disingenuous answer is that they did, in fact, send a bill. She misspoke and said passed the bill, but then she corrected herself later and said we sent a bill down to Congress. They did. January 20th, 2021, they sent down to Congress the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021. And people can gather from a few context clues, one being the name of the bill,
what's the name?
And the other being the timing. This is 4 years after Trump, kids in cages, signs in every yard saying we welcome immigrants. Democrats were at the height of their support for immigrants and immigration reform and a pathway to citizenship for people who were here. And so they put this all into legislation called the Citizenship Act of 2021. There is no chance on earth that Kamala Harris today supports that bill. And that's why I say it's disingenuous.
Yeah, that's a great
point.
point.
You can't say, hey, look, we tried. We did this bill that I no longer support.
Yeah, that's in direct violation of that Senate bill. And this is, again, why it's difficult when people who interview her. I mean, look, as
I wish it would have passed. See, and here's the problem with our system.
Yeah.
It would be better if you could run on a thing, win the election, and implement your agenda, and then people then vote on whether or not they liked the implementation of your agenda or not. Instead, we have this dumb system where we elect this guy, Biden, he writes this law, sends it to Congress, and then it just, the House passes it, but then it just sits there. And so then you're left with this executive action and a harebrained immigration system that falls apart, that then lurches back and forth as a political football, instead of saying, okay, look, Democrats like pathways to citizenship. They want a fairly open immigration system. It's got billions for quote unquote root causes in this bill. Like, try that. Let them implement it, and then see what happens. And if you don't like it, vote them out.
I think you should move to Europe, Brian. This sounds like a parliamentary.
I agree. Yes, I know.
It's
like,
move to Britain. It sounds great over there, right? They're doing very well. I'm sure
they somehow can't figure it out either.
I'm sure the parliamentary system is directly reflective of the needs, the wants of the British working class, and it hasn't instead been a 1,000-year battle between aristocracy and them. But
they did get national health care.
They certainly did. Yeah. They also gave up their empire. They also gave up any claim to great power status. They decided to have a single aircraft carrier, and that's basically the only thing that is left between them and being just another Norway. But, look, it's up to them. They decide what they want.
No, I think Stalin and FDR had a little bit more to do with
it. Certainly did. But they had a choice, too. They chose one way, and that's fine. London, it's a nice place to visit and spend your American dollars. But I'll just leave it at that.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.